Hey everyone, I want to preface this video by saying this is by far the toughest power rankings I have ever done. A lot of what you're going to see is highly influenced by what happened during the LAN at the Stage 5 Majors. So please, comments down below, put them down. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? There are some teams that are going to be in spots that you might not agree with. I felt there was a lot of shakeup at this last LAN, and again, these power rankings, more so than any we've done in the past, have been influenced by what happened at that LAN. So the group play is over. The online matches are over. The only thing that matters at this point in time is how you're playing right now in front of a live audience on LAN. So maybe I'll take a tiny bit into consideration what happened during group play and throughout the year, but largely what you're going to see here is based off of what happened at LAN. So we'll get this started, and we won't take too much time, but we look at the bottom part of the league. At number 12, we have LAG. What can you say about LAG? I think their best lineup is when Cheen was in the lineup, but the entire season, they really weren't able to get anything going when it comes to hardpoint and control. You can see in those respawn game types, they are last in the league at 12. Recent matches over on the right-hand side, just a flurry of losses there. And what has them cemented at 12 is just that they haven't been super competitive when it comes to the teams like Seattle and Paris and some of those other squads that are considered to be in the bottom 4 when it comes to power ranking. So LAG we have at number 12. Moving on to number 11, we have the Paris Legion. So 8-22 overall. They're down one spot from where I had them just a few weeks ago. And again, this is a squad that they did show hints during stage 4 that they might have something going, right? They were playing really well at S&D. They were starting to figure things out a little bit, but as of late, the only win that they have in their last 6 matches was against LA Thieves. You can see losses to teams like London and an NYSL squad that really hasn't been playing great. So the season is over for Paris, just like it is for LAG. I'm not quite sure where they go from here, but we'll see what happens. I have them at 11. Moving on to number 10, we have the other EU squad in the London Royal Ravens. So this is actually up 2 spots. I did have them at number 12 just a few short weeks ago, but the story's very similar, right? If you look at their recent matches, they were able to get like a win over Paris. They were able to get a win over an NYSL squad that was down a bit to finish the year. They're not quite the same NYSL that we've seen earlier in the year, but overall, I mean, if you win 9 matches the entire season, that's not going to get you very far. I do think that they were building. There was a bit of momentum behind the London Royal Ravens to end the season, but it just wasn't enough based on what they did the first 3-4 stages. They were knocked out of the CHAMPS discussion pretty early. So we have London at number 10, which brings us to, and this is where things get kind of tough, because I feel like when it comes to the number 9 squad in the Florida Mutineers, I do have them down from 7 just a few weeks ago. But when it comes to Florida and New York and LA Thieves and even Seattle, who made a bit of a run, I know Florida's going to be in CHAMPS, but what they've done as of late really hasn't been all that impressive. And you look at the run that Seattle made, I just feel like Seattle right now is a bit better. And sure, there's a ton of discussion that can go into this based off of which teams should be in CHAMPS. I know I agree that it should only be the top 8 teams, but this year might be a little bit different just based off the fact that the majority of what's going into that was played online, and that obviously affects different teams different than others. So you look at Florida, they're 17-19, but look at what has happened recently. They played NYSL, a down NYSL team that really has been struggling as of late. That knocked them out of the Stage 5 Major, lost to Minnesota, lost to Toronto. So yes, during group stages, they beat LAG, they beat Dallas, they beat Seattle, but again, that was online CoD, and as soon as they got to the Stage 5 Major on LAN, they just weren't playing the same. I do think that they're a dangerous team, and you never quite know what you're going to get if Awakening and Skies pop off, which they normally do. It depends on what you get from Havoc and Neptune, and when those 2 SMGs are playing really well, this is a tough team to deal with. But they've shown, especially on LAN, that they are not performing at the same level as online. So moving on to number 8, I have, and this is down 6 spots. Last time I did my power rankings, which was right before everything happened with Clay, I had them at number 2 because I just figured with Asim not being at the stage 4 major, I gave them a pass. And since then, with Clay stepping away, yes, Asim is back, but they are not the same squad, and that is evident based off their recent matches. So, lost to LA Thieves to get knocked out of the major. Their wins as of late against Florida, which you don't know what we just talked about, which Florida you're going to get, which is why I still have them above Florida. They got to win versus LAG, but losing to Atlanta, losing to London, barely getting a win over Paris. I mean, this is a squad that is struggling, and I just feel like when you look at the rest of the squads that are somewhat in the same vicinity, they are not playing all that impressively. You're not quite seeing the same production out of players like Hydra that you saw just a stage and a half ago. So I'm not quite sure what is going on with New York and how they're going to perform heading into champs, but right now, I just don't have a ton of confidence in them. So at number 8, I have the New York Subliners. Moving on to number 7, and this is by far one of the biggest surprises, is the Seattle Surge. And actually, last time I did this, I did have them at number 8 because they were playing pretty well. But you cannot take away the way that they performed at the Stage 5 Major on LAN, especially the plays that Pristini were making. Of course, Classic also in that S&D against Atlanta. Classic is a player that had gone negative like 16 or 18 matches in a row, and all of a sudden you put these guys on LAN, and they're showing up against some of the most dominant teams in the game right now. So, sure, you can look at their record, 11-25, map record 56-85. Yeah, it's abysmal, but a lot of that comes from when everybody was playing online. You look at it right now, look at their recent matches. They almost beat OpTic to advance even further in that Stage 5 Major. They knocked out Atlanta, got a very impressive, decisive victory over London, 3-0. Paris 3-1, LAG 3-0. I mean, this is a squad that absolutely is getting better, especially the more and more that they play on LAN. This is, again, I mentioned it earlier, this is the point in time where I just wish that every team was at champs. I know, I agree that not every team should be there in a normal year. This is not a normal year. I feel like with everything being played online and it's not a true test of who's beating who, I just think at champs, this squad is one in particular that would be able to make some waves and at least hang with, if not beat, some of those top teams. So I have Seattle at 7th, and it was a little bit indecisive where I put them amongst the Floridas, the New Yorks, and the LA Thieves. So LA Thieves, I actually have up 3 spots from that number 9th position into 6th. You can look at their record and their map record, and everything's basically right around 500. But what really has them where they're at is their recent matches, and I feel like they're maybe just a tiny bit more impressive than what you see out of New York and Florida. This is a squad that I think can instantly gain some momentum and really cause some of those top teams trouble on LAN. Dallas, of course, their last match that knocked them out of the Stage 5 Major didn't play particularly well, but they did get a victory over NYSL. They lost to Toronto in that 2-3 fashion. Again, Toronto's a squad that made it all the way to the grand final, and LA Thieves was hanging with them. OpTic, they got a 3-2 win. Then, sure, you can talk about the group stage and the loss to Paris, loss to Atlanta, whatever. But again, I'm really focused on how teams are playing at LAN, and that's really influencing these power rankings. And as I look at LA Thieves, this is a squad that I think is dangerous to basically anybody that they end up playing. So I have LA Thieves at 6, which brings me to the top 5. And for me, this was really tough. And again, I didn't look too much based off of what happened in group play in Stage 3 online. Like, that's just not important to me. What is important is how teams played at that Stage 5 Major. So at number 5, I have the Dallas Empire, and this is down 1 position from where I had them ago. But again, look at the recent matches. I don't care about their overall record, their map record, how they play in hardpoint for the entirety of the year. I'm looking at what happened during the major, and they started it off in that matchup with Minnesota with a 1-3 loss, and it was a decisive victory for Minnesota in that matchup. They came back in losers bracket. They were able to get a 3-1 win over LA Thieves, but then they decisively lost to OpTic in 1-3 fashion. So you look at how they played, didn't beat Minnesota, beat a team in LA Thieves, which they probably should beat at this point in time, and then didn't look great against OpTic. And I know there was some behind the scenes stuff going on. Crim6 mentioned that his mind might have been a little bit out of it, but who knows if that's an excuse or that's just a talking point. Who knows? But right now, of those top 5 squads, I feel like Dallas is there at number 5, and at number 4, I have OpTic Chicago. And this is tough because the top 4 teams, Minnesota, Toronto, Atlanta, OpTic, those are the 4 teams that I was trying to decide, like, what's the power rankings look like. When it comes to OpTic, I feel like they just didn't quite do enough, right? So recent matches, of course, if you look on the right-hand side, the M dictates what's in the major and what's not. So versus Toronto, first round matchup, 2-3 loss. That was super unbelievably close matchup that they just weren't able to clutch up. Then against Seattle, again, a team that has been playing really well. They did get a 3-2 victory. They were able to knock out Dallas, which is why I have Dallas above them at number 5. So OpTic at number 4. And then against Toronto, they did have another opportunity on that championship Sunday, and they just weren't able to make it happen. So I feel like right now, number 4 is a decent spot for OpTic. I think that anytime they play one of the top squads, they can absolutely hang with them and potentially beat them, as we saw with very close matchups against Toronto and the victory over Dallas. I just want to see, as I've been saying the entire year, just need a little bit more consistency, and we're not quite getting it at every point in time. So at number 4, I have OpTic. At number 3, I have the Atlanta Faze. And yes, they lost to Minnesota. They lost to Seattle. It was an 0-2 major on land, and they were out. And perhaps this is the one team where I thought back to, okay, this is still Atlanta. They're the first hardpoint S&D control. They are still the number 1 team, even though, as of late, even in group play against OpTic, they lost 2-3 to OpTic in group play. They lost both of those matches in land. So I don't think they're as dominant as they have been in the past, especially throughout the first 4 stages. But I think everybody would agree when it comes to champs, this is not a first round matchup that you want to have, right? You don't want to kick off your champs run with having to play Atlanta. I think most teams would agree this is still the most dangerous squad, even though they did have a bit of a hiccup at the stage 5 major. It's still Atlanta, and they're still really solid across the board. So I have Atlanta at 3. If you disagree with this, put it down below. Let me know where you would put them. At number 2, I have the Toronto Ultra. This is up 1 spot from the last time. And when it comes to them, yes, the only team they lost to at the major was Minnesota. So if you go through how they played at the stage 5 major, they came off, got a 3-2 victory over LA Thieves. Most people would agree that's a team they should beat. And then they had a huge matchup with OpTic, took care of business there. The worst match that they had in that stage 5 major was against Minnesota, where they got absolutely smoked and sent down to losers bracket final, where they played OpTic. And I was really excited for that match against OpTic. Viewership was like 110,000 people. I mean, competitive COD really did. They needed this major when it comes to OpTic and Toronto, and them both playing really well. So they were able to clutch up in that losers finals, get that win over OpTic, and then we all know what happened with the reverse ultra mega sweep, whatever you want to call it, where Minnesota clutched up. But overall, I feel like when you look at how they played against some of the other top teams, other than Minnesota, they were pretty dominant. They got impressive wins over OpTic. They got a fairly impressive win against LA Thieves, and they made it pretty far in the major. And for me, that has to count for something. So maybe some people would put Atlanta at 2, or maybe slight changes here and there. But I just feel like in the face of adversity, multiple map 5s, Toronto clutched up, even though they didn't have the best weekend from some of their role players, they were still able to make it all the way to that grand final, and they were one map away from winning it, which brings me to our #1 squad. And I just feel like right now you have to put Minnesota as the #1 team in power rankings. I have them up 5 spots from #6 the last time that I did this, but just look at the teams they beat at that major. I don't feel like you can argue this whatsoever. 3-1 win over Faze to knock them out. 3-1 win over Dallas to send them to losers bracket. 3-0 win over Toronto to send them to losers bracket. And then, of course, the greatest comeback in the history of Call of Duty, winning 5 straight maps after being down 0-4 in a best-of-9. I just feel like right now Minnesota has to be the #1 team when it comes to power rankings, especially because there's no online play left. It is all about what is happening in person on LAN, and this team is clicking at the right time. And if you look at the individual ranks when it comes to game, so you look at Hardpoint, and for the longest time, they had been like the 12th ranked Hardpoint team, and now that's up to 9th. And S&D, they were 5th or 6th. Now that's up to 3rd. And when it comes to Control, yes, raid control has always been their strong suit. Now they've added in Garrison, and you can veto one of those 2 against them, but you cannot veto both, and they always end up coming through in that swing map 3. So Minnesota has got it going on right now. I feel like they're the #1 ranked team in my power rankings. If you disagree, go ahead, put it down in the comments below. I'm really interested to see, because this was a tough one. This is one where wasn't quite sure where to put Seattle, wasn't quite sure where to put New York. I didn't know where to put Minnesota and Atlanta. How much emphasis did I place on what happened in that stage 5 major? So in the comments, please let me know what you agree or disagree with. I'm interested to see. I'll be looking down in the comments and having those interactions. So if you're new around here, you enjoy this sort of content, make sure you go ahead, hit that subscribe button, leave a like if you don't mind, as it really helps out the channel. We are right around the corner from Champs, so expect a ton of content coming out from me here over the next couple weeks. And with that, guys, thank you so much. We will see you in the next upload.